Hello, welcome to the first archaeology session of our Inside with IAIS series. My name is Sarah. I'm going to be showing everybody what the difference is between natural rocks that maybe just look suspicious and rocks that are actually artifacts. I'm going to start out with one that we get common questions on. People will bring these kinds of rocks to the museum, or they will ask us questions about these kinds of rocks, and these are really suspiciously smooth rocks like this. Now, most people assume that because it's so smooth, it has to be man-made, that nothing this smooth and perfectly round can be made in nature. But the truth is that rocks like that are made in nature. They're what are known as water-worked rocks, rocks that have been in streams, in lakes, even in the ocean, and have been worked by the water over and over and over again. It smooths them out over time. That doesn't mean that this maybe wasn't used at one point, but we have no evidence of that. If you can see, it's just perfectly smooth. There's no use wear on it whatsoever. Now, use wear is something that's really important to archaeologists and is something that we look for when we're looking for an artifact. This is an example of an artifact with use wear on it. Can you see where it's really pitted at the bottom? This means that somebody took this river cobble and on another rock, or maybe grinding up nuts for a period of time. You can also see a bit of a crack on the other end. This could be natural. It could also be the result of fracturing. As you can see, there's a bit of pitting on the end of that as well. So somebody was using this end and then eventually it broke. But that kind of use wear is what we're really looking for, because it tells us whether or not somebody was actually using this artifact. Now, the interesting thing about this one, actually, again, it's not an artifact, but we actually don't really know what kind of rock it's made from, which is interesting to us as archaeologists, but doesn't give us a lot of archaeological value because, again, people were not using it. Now, I'm going to go over one of my favorite categories, which is rocks that really want to be something. This rock really, really, really wants to be something. If you were just walking in the woods and you happen to see a rock that looks like this, your first thought would be, that is totally an arrowhead, but it's not. You see how it's too smooth? It's not sharp. It's not thinned down. There's no evidence of flaking on the sides. That's what you really need for it to be a projectile point or an arrowhead, like this one. As you can tell, it's really thinned out. You can even see the scars from where people took out the flakes and made the point. So they were really working this and trying to create something with this. You can also see at the bottom where the tangs were chipped off, probably through use or maybe through an accident. This one, while it has a suspicious shape, and certainly natural artifacts, natural rocks will have a suspicious shape, sometimes just a rock. It's a cool looking rock. This is part of my personal collection. I found it on an excavation, I think about 4 years ago, but it's just a rock. Now, these are examples of what we call flakes, or you can see it kind of is just like a smooth, flat looking rock. Smooth, flat looking rock. But the edge is worked. It's nice and sharp. So these were used to help cut, either cut skins, cut plants, cut meat, things like that. These had a variety of uses. You could use them as knives. You could use them, if they're big enough, you could use them to create another point. But the objective is that it needs to have a really thin edge. There are certain other things that we look for when we are looking for a flake or a biface or any other tool like that to determine whether or not it's actually a flake. But one of the big things is this manufacture, this chipping. You can see the flaking scars. Rocks like quartz and quartzite are really difficult to tell whether or not they have been flaked, because naturally they will flake off the rock like this. And so it sometimes takes a lot of work. You have to compare with other people. I almost always, when I find a suspicious looking quartz or quartzite, will ask for a second opinion. So last thing that I want to show you guys is, again, another really suspicious looking rock. And this is going to be kind of a test for you guys. Is this an artifact or just a suspicious looking rock? This is just a suspicious looking rock. But again, you'll hand this to people and they'll say, oh, those platforms, that it was like that, it kind of creates a rhomboid shape like that. It has to be an artifact, but it really doesn't. Again, rocks are weird. They will make suspicious looking artifacts all the time, but there's no evidence of use wear. There's no evidence of flaking. This is just how this rock naturally fractured off of the bigger rock. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions, I will be paying attention to the feed, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.